I grew up in Le Grand, California. I had a rather difficult childhood. Um, I had the best of both worlds. I came from a very well off family, but we had a lot of secrets in our family. And I suffered a lot of turmoil growing up. And then I also had good times when I was an athlete. And that carried on into my adulthood. I used to throw an 80-mile-an-hour softball. I was very proud of myself. I got to play with Lisa Fernandez, the first USA Olympic women's softball team, fast pitch pitcher. I learned how to throw her changeup. I was very proud of myself. I had the best grandparents in the entire world. My pa and grandma did so much for me and really helped mold me into the person I am today. When I got older, I met my husband and we started having children. And then I started having lots of health problems after my children were born. I was first diagnosed with ankylosing spondylitis, which is a rare spine disease. And it started to cripple me. I was in a wheelchair for about 12 years and prescribed oxycodone and morphine. I was on those for 12 years. And then I had a series of unfortunate medical events happen. I had a primary doctor take me off of those cold turkey. I lost a bunch of weight, and in July of 2019, I lost over 100 pounds in 3 months, and then I suffered a sudden cardiac arrest on October the 13th of 2019 for 18 minutes. And they put me into a medically induced coma and for 4 days. And at that time also, I was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's disease. And that basically brings us to where we're at today and why I'm talking to you, because when I died, I went to heaven, and God told me that it wasn't my time, and that my mission when I got back was to bring awareness to everybody and about the early onset, because so many people know about later onset, but they're not knowledgeable or educated about early onset and about the difficulties that people like myself have in getting diagnosed, getting proper care, getting people to actually believe that we have the disease. That's what I'm suffering with right now, ageism. Ageism is a big problem. And that's why I'm talking to you today, because if I can do something to help other people, bring support and help to them, then I'm doing my job that God sent me back to do. We're still here, and most of us are still comprehending, and we're aware of what we're going through. And I belong to a couple of groups, like on Facebook or Twitter, and some caregivers are not compassionate or aware to the fact that we are still aware of what we're going through. And they get upset at the ones that they're caring for, and they're not understanding that, sometimes the anger that we're portraying is just misguided, or it's going in the wrong direction. And sometimes we just don't know how to express it the right way. And caregivers need to be a little more understanding, and that's where education comes in. I think there needs to be a lot more educational classes for caregivers. I've seen it myself in my own family. They get frustrated so quickly because they can't understand why, it happened with me. My great grandmother used to ask me to make her some fried chicken and mashed potatoes. And so I would go make her this wonderful dinner. And then she'd say, I don't want that. I want a hamburger, And then you're like, well, gosh, I just made this whole dinner. But you have to just say, okay, I'll go get that hamburger. It's not worth the argument. Say, well, I cooked you this dinner, you should eat it. And some people just aren't compassionate in that way and don't understand. And sometimes, like with people have a problem with hallucinations, or they think that their loved one isn't seeing somebody that they might actually be seeing. And you need to be compassionate towards that, because it's a proven thing. Most of the time when Alzheimer's patients say they're seeing their loved one, they're seeing their loved one. Respect, compassion, love, being there, and just listening. They need to be honest. But that's a tricky thing too, because sometimes you have to fudge a little. Like if a loved one, like for example, when I took care of my great grandmother who had Alzheimer's, she would always want to have dinner on the table by 5 o'clock for my grandfather who was already deceased. So I would go in there and I'd set the table and I would have her participate with me like he was coming home. And then she'd want to make a phone call. So we pretend like we were calling him on the phone. But it was a routine that we did just so she would feel better and I could calm her down. And sometimes you have to do that to give her a little bit of peace. And to me, that's what Alzheimer's is about. Sometimes you have to fudge a little bit to do those things to calm, the Alzheimer's patient down. And sometimes it doesn't feel like you're doing the right thing, but it is the right thing. I have my notebook and I take notes, but that only helps to a certain point, because sometimes I'll take notes and I'm like, okay, what does that note mean? But I have my children and I have my husband to help me. I know just in your last question, I forgot already what your question was totally about. But that's just the reality of the Alzheimer's. My short-term memory is just gone. And that's what makes this disease so frustrating, because one minute I'm there, the next minute I'm not. And that's my reality. That's a good question, because I don't know. It's almost like I space out. There's no thought. And that's a scary feeling, because I'm so used to having lots of thoughts, running all over in my mind, to not having any. And that's very scary. Like, I've been dealing with seizures lately, which has been very scary for me. And the weird thing about my seizures is, during a seizure, you shouldn't experience any kind of hallucination or anything. You're just supposed to go blank. Well, after the seizure, I'm having visions and things. So something's reacting in my brain afterwards. And that part is scaring me. And I don't know what to do. And then other times I'm seeing black. And when I do that, that's really scaring me. Like my eyes, I don't see anything. It's total darkness. And the couple of times I've experienced that, I've really been very terrified. When I've gone through it, for me, it feels like hours. But when because I've been doing it in front of my children and my husband, and I think it was at the most 2 hours. That's a long time. But the seizures were only like maybe 2 or 3 minutes, but even that's a long time. I've just been wanting to sleep lately. And that's a new thing that's just started happening. And I didn't quite understand, why am I so tired? Plus I've got the thyroid issue too that's been acting up right now too, so that's not helping. I find that if I do too much, then I get totally overwhelmed and my brain really can't process things. Like if I go to town with my husband and I get around people, I'm like, oh, I can't comprehend things anymore. And that's difficult for me because I didn't used to be that way. And that's a hard pill to swallow. I get a lot, people will come up and they'll say, oh, I'm so sorry, Bobby. And I'm like, what? I don't want you to feel sorry for me. That's not what this is about either. I'm still me, and just because I have this disease doesn't mean that I'm gone yet. I've also lost a bunch of family, and that's what's been difficult for me also. I don't have a lot of family support, and that's sad to me because they just don't understand. My mom and dad don't speak to me anymore. My other sister doesn't speak to me anymore. Well, half of my extended family doesn't speak to me because they think I'm crazy. I find it sad because they're not educated enough to even look into the disease and read something on it. And I just don't have the time to sit there and say, well, come on, all you have to do is go to alzheimers.org and look into it. I've got to live my own life and be healthy for myself. So, and if I can help other people, then that's my purpose. And playing my Pink Floyd music. I'm a huge David Gilmour fan. And I've never been to a concert. And I told my husband, before I die again, I want to see David Gilmour. So yes, absolutely. I listen every time that I feel like my brain's starting to shut down. I'll turn on my Pink Floyd and I'll just chill out. And it's funny, I can remember the lyrics to the songs, but I can't remember other things. But the lyrics to the songs I can do. I don't know why, but it's soothing. And cooking too. I grew up cooking with my grandmother, and those two things are very comforting to me. I may forget salt or something every once in a while, but I'm still doing okay in there.